Just hit the mic.
On Robert.
Oh, already set up.
Yep.
Did you hit record or is it already?
I think it's already going. I think we're good to go. But you can double check. Feel free to do that. Hey, Robert.
Hello.
We're going to go ahead and get started. Thanks to Mastery for sponsoring this evening and for providing the pizza and the awesome facilities to meet in. Dan and Nick will tell us a little bit more about Mastery here in a bit, but we always like to start our meetings off asking for community announcements. This is a community group. We want to be community driven. We spread the love across a lot of different sponsors because we feel like that's the best way for you to get to know who and what's happening in Omaha. It'd be a whole lot easier for us to just get one sponsor and just go with that for the whole year, but we like to talk with different people all throughout the year and do that. So happy to be at Mastery tonight and talking about that. But before we do that, again, community group, we'd love to hear what you're doing, what's happening in your world. I know we just got done with HDC, so who here in the room was at HDC? I unfortunately didn't get to go this year. So who was it again? We got so not a whole lot. Okay. How was it? Was it good? Yeah?
Yeah. Numbers were good this year.
Good. Yeah, that's awesome. I know with COVID, I'm sure that's been a difficult thing for them to recover. Yeah.
You can tell
good.
Close to normal.
Well, I'm sorry I didn't make a thing. That's one of my favorite things to do there is go catch up with people I haven't seen in a while. Yeah, but again, we got HDC. The rest code happened already, I think. Where's that happening?
Ignite is happening on the 12th.
Ignite is coming up. Yep, and .NET Conf is coming up. We're gonna for next month's meeting, instead of having a presenter, we're gonna just get a room at another business here in town and just watch the .NET Conf as a group. So you guys are welcome to join us to do that. I think it'll be a lot of fun. We'll provide snacks and food throughout the day and maybe do some giveaways. We might be able to do that. We'll see. But yeah, so we got that going on. Brian, anything else? No? Tell me about some cool stuff you guys have been doing. Who's got something that they're just super stoked about and excited to be alive and learning? Well,
Someone's doing something.
Yeah, me personally, I've been in Azure AD heaven, and so that's been my challenge, trying to figure out how all the different flows work there and all the nuances with the way that they configure that and doing that. So at some point in the future, I'd love to probably give a presentation on that and talk about it a bit more, but yeah, that's kind of what I'm hitting my head up against right now. But it's fun. You learn, you grow. Who else? Okay. Well, hop on Slack if you want to tell us what you're doing. I'd love to hear about it. We have driven some great conversations there in the past. It's been down a little bit lately, so we need to drive that back up. I think that's always a lot of fun. We used to post puzzles out there too. I need to start doing that again. But yeah, so again, we're going to have Robert talk to us here in a bit, and we got Daniel from Mastery who's going to do the talk. Daniel, where are you? Right there. And we've got Jonathan, who's going to give a talk, and I'm missing somebody. Alec, I'm sorry. Alec's right there, the guy right in the front row in the middle. And then Marcus maybe, and then Robert again. Robert's going to do it twice tonight. So yeah, right. So we'll see how time goes, and we'll adjust.
Some blankets, we'll bring them.
Yeah. All right. Anyway, I've spoken long enough. I'm going to turn the mic over to Nick. Yes, this is Nick or Dan, whichever one of you guys wants to talk. Go ahead and tell us about Mastery.
I'll tell you about Mastery. I want to talk about Robert first. Okay. This guy's amazing. So we met at HDC 1 in Des Moines. I don't know what year that was. 2004. But anyway, I was talking to him at HDC this year. He was there presenting, drove all the way to Minneapolis yesterday, drove back for this tonight, so crazy.
That's a round of applause right there.
Yeah. This guy's dedicated. Anyway, welcome to Mastery. We're the new guys in town. I say new because we're 3 years old is all. In Omaha, we're about 100 folks or so. Nationwide, we're about 525-ish. We're in 39 different states. We've got 3 physical offices, Omaha, Chicago, and Minneapolis. Chicago actually has 2 offices. They have like a dev shop downtown, which is tough to get to, but it's a pretty cool office. And then our corporate office up in Lake Forest. Owners are out of Lake Forest, so that's why we're home based there. But anyway, Mastery, we're in the transportation space, so true software company, SaaS company in the logistics world. Customers of ours are like Werner Trucking's at one of our customers, so many of you know them in town. They use our software to move their freight from A to B. Right now they're using us for their brokerage side, and we'll get into all their asset management stuff soon, like real soon. But no, right now we've got, how many customers? 10-ish, yeah. I know we've got a number of the top 10 trucking companies already signed. Werner's one of them, of course. Schneider, Prime, Ruan. And then from there we'll move into rail, which is going to be cool. We're going to move into ocean, which is cool, cross border. So we're just getting started, and we're growing like crazy. Dan, you were in the single digits.
Yeah, somewhere in there. I think it's top 15.
Yeah,
somewhere there.
So in 3 years, to grow to 525 people, and then another 250, 300 offshore as well to combat that. So from an engineering perspective, the numbers are, if you're thinking just engineering, it's probably about 300 of that 500 is engineering. So true software company. Here in Omaha, that 100 people I mentioned is a mix of kind of everybody. We've got engineers, product, QA, a little bit of everything, bartenders. So yeah, really cool space. We've been up here about 6 months. We started in the first floor, really small space, graduated to this one. We're spoiled. It's awesome. Our owners are awesome. So when you get a chance to take a break, walk around, it's a really cool space. But yeah, if you got questions, Dan, myself, Jen Baer, principal architect over there, Daniel, Nathan, all engineers here.
K-Dub.
Oh, K-Dub right in front of my face, Kenny.
K-Dub has his own Slackmoji group.
Yeah.
So if you're looking for who's famous in the company, it's Kenny.
Yeah.
Right. So if you're looking for the smartest guy, Daniel, Jen, right? Those people are definitely going to be the leaders. If you're looking for the Slackmoji leader, it's Kenny here in the front row.
So yeah, that's kind of the engineering side of it. We are a .NET shop, .NET, C#. We're a microservices shop, so we do have some Kafka. We do have, we use GraphQL, which you'll learn about here pretty soon with Daniel's presentation. We use GraphQL with Apollo Federation to communicate between services, along with Kafka, of course.
I think you'll get a lot of honesty too. We don't have all our shit figured out. In year 3, you're not supposed to. It's okay.
Yeah.
If we acted like it, we're lying. So we're just going to stand at the front and say we don't. We're working through it. It's neat because you look at how we start, where we are, where we're going. You see that evolution. It's with the same challenges that every company follows, and that's okay. So sometimes you just have to look at yourself and say, we're on the learning curve too. Everyone is, and the people that say they're not are lying to you. So if you ask any questions, we're going to be really honest about it. There's some shit we haven't figured out. There's stuff we're working on. There's things in pencil. There's things in ink. There's things in concrete. And I think as any company, you're trying to understand, what those are from a technology perspective. But at the end of the day, like any Midwest-based company, it's about people and learning and just the right attitude. And if you do that well, the rest kind of works itself out.
And it is great to live in that bleeding edge world, in the tech space. So we're not afraid to try stuff. We've tried a lot of different things here in 3 years, and
we'll tell you what's failed too. We'll tell you out loud, like, don't do this, right?
Or what's failing. But yeah, Apollo Federation, with GraphQL and .NET microservices, like they weren't even a thing to us, any of us here, 3 years ago. But that's been fun. Yeah, I don't know. You want to say anything more about the history?
No. I think history's I think you've covered history. It's neat because you go into a different domain, you learn something new, but what's wild is you run into the same challenges as everything else. You could drop anyone into a shop and it's like, what about performance? What about scalability? What about implementations? What about keeping people focused? Normal stuff, so if you have the normal problems, it's okay.
Yep. That's us, Mastery. Hit us up for questions in between talks, whatever. We'll give you tours, all that good stuff. Enjoy.
Thanks. Oh, and as a reminder for our presenters tonight, we're going to try and keep it at 15 minutes. We've got a few people, so let's just try to be cognizant of the time. Thanks, guys. Go ahead. Yeah, Robert, it's all yours.
All right, so we're going to talk about tell web ads to shut their pie hole. I actually thought I could take web off there, and I'll talk about that a little bit. But so my motivation, I've always been annoyed by ads. I think everybody is. But years ago when I would surf, I think I was looking at shoes on Amazon, and then that same damn pair of shoes showed up on every other. That was too much. I mean, that's too creepy for me. That's why I started to look for things. I also wanted faster browsing. I wanted better privacy. For ad blocking, there are browser extensions, but they seem like a lot of work to me because I've got a lot of devices. I don't like extensions in a browser, just the amount of stuff they have access to from a security perspective. I happen to have a spare Raspberry Pi laying around, which was helpful, and then 2 trusted recommenders. So, Have I Been Pwned, Troy Hunt, Scott Helm, those 2, I had both gone through this process with Raspberry Pi, so I said I'm just going to try it and see how it goes. So what is Pi-hole? Pi-hole is a black hole for internet advertisements, and it does network-wide blocking. So you can set it up on your home network. It'll block anything that's connected to your Wi-Fi for ads, and I'll talk a little bit about how it does it and what it'll stop. It's free. It's open source. Jacob Samela started in 2014. He bought into a Kickstarter, and he said it was just no good when it showed up. So he said, I'm going to try to do something different. So. Motivation, so the 1.1.1.1 is Cloudflare's DNS service. So this stuff's going to be built on DNS. So I went out to CNN.com, I used Fiddler, I tracked how many requests it was making and everything else. So if you look up here, I just went to CNN with the normal DNS, there were 514 requests. The homepage itself, I talked to 166 different hosts, which is pretty freaky. That was almost 5 meg for the size of the file. After I put Pi-hole in place, it was down to 97 requests. I cut 81% of the requests, I cut 86% of the hosts, and I cut the bandwidth in half. And the same thing here for USA Today. And the news sites tend to be on the worse end as far as tracking and advertising and everything else. And I just gave you a typical what we see at home for 24 hours of statistics. 40-ish% of all the DNS requests end up being blocked because of Pi-hole. So DNS, if you're not familiar with it, it translates a domain name into an IP address. So I just put example.com, it goes to an IP address. Every time you're typing in a browser, it's going out to some DNS service and resolving to an IP address, and then they actually set up the sockets and TCP and everything else and connect. There are a lot of public DNS servers. They're decent for, if you pick the right ones, they're good for privacy, better performance, reliability, security. Most people just take whatever their ISP has, right? They hook up, whatever the ISP chooses for DNS is what they use. I moved quite a while ago to use public DNS servers just because they also track where you go. Your DNS service is watching where you go, and I didn't like that. The Cloudflare is 1.1.1.1. They came out then with a blocking malware. So 1.1.1.2 is the DNS service to block malware, and then you can also block malware and adult content with 1.1.1.3. I did find a DNS that actually claimed it blocked ads. It's called AdGuard DNS. I hooked it up. It's decent. I'll talk a little bit about why I like Pi-hole better. So how does Pi-hole work? You're going to install and configure. It's just a shell script software I install on my machine. And then I'm going to set it up to be my DNS server. So on my network, I'm going to basically install, and by the way, I'm going to give you slides at the end, because this is like an hour talk usually, and it'll show you exactly how to install and all that stuff. But basically, you set up Pi-hole on any Linux UX, then you go onto your router and you make it be your DNS server. And I'll show that a little bit later here. Then what it does is, it's basically, think of it as it's a list of places you don't want to go, and then it goes out to a real DNS server to get it if it's not blocked. So for instance, if I typed, I don't know, I'll use CNN.com. If I type that in, you go to Pi-hole, if that was something that either came with one of my block lists or I chose specifically to not allow, Pi-hole will give me back an invalid IP address. So it'll just say DNS didn't resolve. If it's any other site, Pi-hole will just forward it to an upstream DNS server, so I get the IP just like I used to. So I use the Cloudflare, the 1.1.1.3, blocking malware and blocking, what's the other one I had on there? Adult content. So I've got that upstream with Cloudflare, and then the Pi-hole's just locally with that list of addresses, and when I go to do that DNS, it'll just send back and say, that's not a valid domain name, there's no IP address for that. There are different things you can do, so you can actually send back blank pages and other things. They switched the default to just return a 502 and say it's not, the domain doesn't exist. How you set it up. So I took a Raspberry Pi, like I said, that's what I happen to have. And in the slide deck, I have the two different ones I tried it on. I tried on a Pi-hole 0, which is the really stripped down, just Wi-Fi. I think it was like $30. And then I had it on a Raspberry 3 Plus. They both work pretty good. So I go through the install process for that. Then I sit down on my router at home, and I just need to point my DNS server to Pi-hole's IP address. I'll give you a couple warnings. Don't set up a secondary DNS. So when I first did it, I thought I'm going to make Pi-hole be first. I'll have Cloudflare be second. That way if Pi-hole died, I'd still be able to do stuff. Windows doesn't work that way. It just round robins. I noticed about half the time ads weren't blocked, and that's how I figured out. So don't set up a secondary DNS. Just do primary, point at your Pi-hole. When I first set it up, I beta tested it myself. So I actually just went on my laptop, I changed my DNS server to be the Pi-hole IP, so I was the only person being impacted. Beta testing before I would get what I call family feedback, right, of things not working. I was worried that if somebody needed it for school, if somebody had to order something and had to do something for work, I don't want to end up being blocked. So I ran that way for a couple weeks. It worked fine for me, so we switched over probably 2 years ago, and I think I can count on 2 hands how many times I've actually had an issue where I had to shut it off or do anything different. So I was watching, so back to the good news, if I set that up on Wi-Fi for my entire network, any device that connects to my network is going to get that benefit. So we do it for all of our phones, my Xbox, all of those streaming services, any of them. If they're using DNS to pull an ad, it'll get blocked by Pi-hole. And the only time I think we had problems, one of the bigger ones, we were trying to watch, I think NCAA championships or something, they want their ad revenue, and they can actually detect that I'm blocking ads. So they basically said either shut off your ad blocker or you can't watch this. And so I just went into Pi-hole and said for 2 hours, let it go through. But if you see, we've had a couple instances like that where we tried to use something, it didn't work, we didn't know why. We just go into the DNS configuration and say shut Pi-hole off for 10 minutes, sit down, do whatever we have to do. And like I said, it doesn't happen very often. Some of the continued risks, just so you understand what the issues are, DNS traffic is not encrypted. So your normal DNS traffic, anybody can look at and anybody can modify if you didn't know that. So the way I have it configured today, I'm still using Cloudflare upstream, but somebody could do what they call DNS poisoning, where they actually, I say I want to go to CNN, it goes through Pi-hole, Pi-hole says that's fine, it goes out to Cloudflare. On the way back, somebody could actually intercept and say it's at this IP address when it's really not. So just be aware. I put a link there for Scott Helm. Actually went through a whole process of how you can set it up to use DNS over HTTPS if you want to do that. And so you can read that article if you want to. It's only going to block ads if they're based on domain names. If you understand the concept of the Pi-hole, you're just taking domain names to IP addresses. Some of the advertisers have figured this out, so they just use IP addresses for their links. They're pulling this ads they want directly using IP. So Pi-hole is not going to do anything for that. There are a lot of devices, not a lot, but there's devices and software that intentionally ignore your DNS settings. So they're hard-coded to go out to their own DNS server. So just be aware in that case you can't do anything. If there's domains that aren't listed in your Pi-hole, so when you install Pi-hole, there's like 2 basic block lists. I love the internet. Somebody keeps a list of all the places with ads and keeps it updated for me. I just point to that list. So it gets updated, I think, every week or so. So if it's a brand new domain, somebody just spun up today, it's not going to be in the list and it's not going to get blocked. But if I notice that, I can look at the log files and I can actually go in and manually say, I don't want you to go here anymore. Or I can do it for any site I want. Right? If I decide I hate, USA Today, I could put them in that into that list, and nobody on my network would be able to get there again, if that makes sense. So some quick resources. Pi-hole, it's got good documentation. The link to Raspberry Pi goes through all of the stuff. That's the Twitter. And then there's my Twitter, my email, my blog. That's where you can get the slides if you're interested. Like I said, that's an hour-long talk, so it goes through all the how do you specifically install everything, get it configured, all that kind of stuff. Okay? That's it.
So we didn't get a chance to figure out who's up next, all the order of stuff. Any one of our volunteers our presenters want to volunteer to go next? All right, Daniel. I got a link for you, Daniel, so you can do the screen share via the stream. How can I get that to you? Slack? Okay. I'll do that.
HDMI and power.
Power's the whole Wi-Fi thing basically off your USB.
Well, these things have USB-C, so we're plugging them there. As long as that's
What was your last name again?
my last name? Rosberg.
There's two of you. Send to this guy. Let's go there. Did you get the link?
Nope, I didn't even look for it. Then you want to...
Did you get it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, you can't see that because I have the presentation.
There we go. Got it.
All good?
Good.
Okay. Well, I hope you guys are all enjoying the office so far. This is the first place I've worked where there's actually a bar in the office and beer on tap. I've never heard of that before, but it's definitely interesting. I've been with Mastery for about 8 months now, and so I thought I'd give a talk about one of the technologies we use here that would have definitely made my life a lot easier if I knew it even existed before then. And that technology we use here right now is GraphQL. Can I click on? There we go. GraphQL has been the service we use for our client to server and our server to client communication. It allows us to go ahead and do all of that communication much simpler than just writing our own TCP sockets. The first technology I used at my job before was SOAP with WCF. If you've ever used WCF, Microsoft says it's the one solution to everything. I say it's the one solution to many, many problems and headaches. I've never seen someone configure it correctly and easily without losing all the hair color. What SOAP did give us that was kind of nice was a contract. We had a simple way to go ahead and send that contract off to our clients. Our clients, if their technologies could support it, could go build their clients. If they didn't, then we just waved and we tried to help them, but there was no way for us to really read those binary files ourselves. So it was easy for us to implement until we started to get into firewalls. And we ran into issues because you couldn't send binary data over the firewalls. People would block that. We'd go do some hacking. We did it to switch to ASCII. Then we ran into issues with certs. We'd go do some hacking again. And you have 30, if not more, web configs, app configs just trying to make this WCF work for each of your individual clients. So eventually, our problems got a bit better and Web API came out. Web API helped us quite a bit because we didn't need to worry about binary. We didn't need to worry about any of those cert issues. We could just push our web server to IIS and be good to go. However, we ran into issues that we thought it was easy to implement REST, and the more we did REST, the more our security people would be going, hey, you can't be doing this, you have social security numbers in the logs. And we go, what do you mean there's social security numbers in the logs? Well, people were sending GET commands with query strings filtering on social security numbers. Well, they need to be able to do that. So let's just do a body. That's when you learn you can't do bodies with GETs. I think they now support it, but back then there was no support. So we switched everything to using post. Well, when was your post and updates and create? And it just got more complicated the more we tried to do things. As well as our end users that had SOAP and could integrate with it now lost the ability of having a contract. They don't know what to send us and they don't know what they're getting back. So how did we go ahead and try to deal with that? We moved all that time we spent configuring our WCF to now helping our end users try to write their own wrappers and their own SDKs. And eventually Swagger came out to be, and Swagger made all those things a lot nicer for us. Until you start to get into errors and edge cases. So you could go ahead and specify everything up front, but that would always be the 99th percentile. Not all social security numbers are numbers. Some are letters if you start to deal with social security numbers that are temporary. So now how do we cover that in our edge cases? I'm assuming many of us have been to a place to use one of those prepaid gift cards, and if you've ever tried to use the rest of those money on that gift cards, good luck. I know McDonald's supports it, but most places would just crash if you tried to use those remaining gift card values because those point-of-sale systems never covered those edge cases. So we dealt with it. We would try to tell people edge cases when they came up to be, but it was still at least easier than dealing with all that binary implementation. And eventually then we came to seeing that gRPC existed. gRPC was a nice, once again, strict contract that we could go ahead and implement and use. It supported the firewalls, it was easy to understand, and just about every tool language out there can use it. We were good to go. And then the business said, let's go to mobile. That's not gonna work because everybody we work with has 100 to 200 megabit connection, and they can handle the thousands of requests we make just to load the page and load the information. So how do we solve this? Well, we started to build facades of here's your mobile request, here's your web request, here's your desktop. If you've done that route, you're creating a lot of boilerplate and a lot of headache. And we never did solve it. And I came to Mastery, and what we had the GraphQL. Supported a nice contract. It worked with our firewalls. It was easy to implement and easy to understand. I learned how to write the queries within an hour. Do I know everything? No. But I've also studied T-SQL for 14 years, and I still don't know everything. Things are continuing to change, but you can learn enough to be effective. What GraphQL brought to us as well is you can scope what you want your query to return. If you want to just see the given names of your customers, just ask for the given names, and it won't send you their socials, their physical addresses, their mailing addresses. Don't overload your bandwidth when you don't need it. Not only did GraphQL bring us that, but it also was opinionated. So pagination was built with it. Filtering came with it. And here at Mastery, as they stated earlier, we have lots and lots of microservices. GraphQL brought with us fragmentation, which the first time you look at it, it probably will hurt your head, but as you interact with it, it's beneficial. As if I was shopping at Amazon, you have your order. Well, that's going to be in their tracking service on my order and my products, which will be in their warehouse, which has how much Amazon paid for that product, how much they're selling it for. Plus on that order, they're having their billing system, who bought it. What's the tax exempt status? Those are all in different systems. The fragment allows your front end to ask one query, and that will split that query between those different systems and bring it back together in the end. So you can see your whole domain as just one entity, even though you're splitting your back end. Now, how do we do this in our .NET ecosystem? The main tools out there right now are Chili Cream. Chili Cream produces hot chocolate, strawberry shake, banana cake pop, and green donuts. And yes, this company is alive and making money with these names. The theme that they write right now is hot chocolate is the server side. It's what takes the queries, digests it in our C# side, and spits it back out with the results. Strawberry Shake is if you're the client digesting this information, it's the client to the server. How can I, in my C# realm or F#, write my queries and get a usable DTO in the end? We've all reached out to some systems and we did a nice result and we have no idea how to interact with it. That's where Strawberry Shake comes to help. Banana Cake Pop is like Postman. It allows you to see your schema and explore and try to do your sandboxing before you go write your code. Green Donut is the oddball on all these tools. Green Donut was created by Chili Cream to solve the N+1 problem. If you have to use Entity Framework before and you have objects with list of objects with list of objects and you try to query all that, sometimes you don't always get your data. It's missing something or your counts will be off. Green Donut was created by Chili Cream to go ahead and solve that problem. So if you're using Entity Framework with Chili Cream, Green Donut can solve some of those problems for you. Now, hot chocolate, the tool as well as the drink, is great for any day. I like hot chocolate all year round. Some people say I'm insane. I probably am. But hot chocolate wants to set you in the pit of success regardless of where you are in your system. If you're writing an MVP, a minimal viable product, you can bind your hot chocolate directly to an iQueryable. If you have your data separations and setup, you can bind your hot chocolate to your business layer. Or if you're like me who loves to use the mediator pattern, you can also bind to your mediator pattern. If you're trying to interact with something you don't know or it's not out there, they also support the adapter pattern. So for instance, if you had an LDAP server in your environment, there is no tool to build that. You could go ahead and use the adapter and build your adapter, which will take your selects, take your filters from your graph query, and you can translate that into your LDAP query. Now, I'm also not a big fan of tools. Tools come and go. And some days you deal with a tool that you've loved for years and they get bought, and now you gotta get a divorce with that tool because the whole pricing model changed, the tool's gone, or on some days the developers pass away and you're not gonna get any more updates. What's nice about Hot Chocolate is they support dependency inversion. You can invert Hot Chocolate from your codebase. You don't need to marry it. It also highly recommends using dependency injection, so you can inject your dependencies. When something new comes out, switch to it. It was also built understanding the hexagonal, the onion, the clean code architecture, whatever you want to call it. It was built to support plugging into your system and allowing it to be unplugged. So Hot Chocolate eventually will not be the tool in 10 to 15, 20 years. It will be just like WCF. We thought was great, and we learned it wasn't too great. So when the time comes for something else to be replaced, you can switch and not have to regret it. Because of its plug-and-play adaptability, you can plug it into your Web API servers. If you're running WCF, you can plug it into those servers and not have to worry about any of those concerns. And if it doesn't work, you can just uninstall your unit package and move on with your day. So, thank you for your time. I'm gonna break
Who's next? All right. Floor is yours.
I was like, I better shut that off. It's like, deactivate all.
Should turn solid. Hey, you should go to screen share with Roam. And the blue select screen to share button down at the bottom, or halfway down. Yeah. And then you can choose your screen.
You only go one direction, right? You can't go backwards.
That.
Got it.
All right, hello everyone. I guess I need to put this on. Okay, my name's Jonathan Abe. I'm a tech lead at Qt. Today I'm going to be talking about rewriting .NET applications using the Strangler pattern. Is anyone supporting a .NET Framework app currently? A few people? You might want to pay attention. You might find this interesting. So Strangler pattern. This is named after the strangler fig, which is a plant that grows around trees. Kind of, it grows and like creates branches, and eventually it surrounds and kills the tree. And it sounds kind of graphic, but sometimes you do want to kill the service that you are replacing and you want it to go away. So sometimes that's a good thing, but this is a way of migrating legacy system that you have over to the new latest and greatest technology, like .NET 6 or whatever it is. So this pattern uses a step-by-step layered approach. So using the pattern, you're able to piece by piece migrate your old legacy application to the new application. This is an illustration of what it looks like. So you'll see at first you start with your legacy app, and that's large because you just got started. You're starting to rewrite it into something new. Your new app is very small, starting at the beginning, and then over time you will rewrite the application, build your new application, keep building on it, and it gets larger and larger until it completely replaces your legacy app. So this strategy is not something that you would use for every project. If you have a small application that maybe you could rewrite within a couple of weeks or something like that, this might not be the fit for you. It's more for those really large, complex, high-value applications that need a lot of stability. Maybe your business really depends on this application, and you don't really necessarily want to switch out that old app with a new one in one stroke because there's high risk there. Something could go wrong, and if it's a high-value application, sometimes you can't have those huge breaks or that large amount of downtime. So this is a more methodical, incremental approach for rewriting things. There's less risk involved. Your QA testers, if you have manual QA testing, anyone involved in the testing process, they get bite-sized chunks to test as you migrate. So it's a good option when you want the migration to be predictable and low risk. It also fits well with Agile because you can put a story in to rewrite this one piece, and you can have another story to rewrite this other piece. If you're migrating your whole application all at once, it might not be as easy to split out those stories in your Agile project. So this makes it easier to split the work up into smaller chunks. Different devs can take different pieces of work, so you can have different people working on this at all the same time, not interfering with each other, hopefully. And you also can incrementally deploy your new application to production. So you can have multiple production releases, as many as you want, over time as you are continuing to build out the new app. There are some downsides to it. Overhead, if you have resources that you're hosting the old application on, you're going to potentially need to double those resources. So if you're on-prem, you're going to have to host another web application. If you're in the cloud, you're going to have to reproduce those Azure resources. You're going to need the same infrastructure for your new application as you do with your old. You're going to host them side by side. The total length of the project may be longer if you're using this pattern as opposed to just rewriting it all in one stroke. And like I said, it's not really the best fit necessarily for those small projects. There's another tool called the .NET Upgrade Assistant that you can use to help you just migrate a project in one fell swoop. It's not perfect, but it can kind of get you started if you have a smaller project that you're migrating. Okay, so how are we going to do this? Well, I'll go back a couple of slides. The classic way that this works is you have this strangler facade, and all of the requests to your application will go through the facade, and your facade would decide which application to route the request to, depending on whether your new application can handle it or not. What we're going to use in .NET makes our lives a lot easier. It works a little bit differently. The requests will go to your new application, and it will decide if it can handle the requests or not, and forward any requests it can't handle. So the way that you get started with this is by installing an extension called Microsoft Project Migrations into Visual Studio. I think it's Visual Studio only. I don't think there's a VS Code edition of this. So you would install that extension. Then you'll get a little option on your context menu when you right-click on your solution. Actually, when you right-click on a project, you'll have the option to migrate that project, and then it'll do its magic. It's going to kind of add NuGet packages. It's going to do all sorts of things. It's going to set up some configuration. It uses a library called YARP, if you've ever heard it before. It stands for yet another reverse proxy, because that's what you're doing here. You're using a reverse proxy. So it will set up a new project. It'll be in .NET 6. This will be your new application that you're rewriting into, and that new application will be configured to do all of this stuff. And so you'll see some of that in your new project. There's a launch settings.json file. It will show you kind of the configuration that gets set up for this. There's a particular setting that's really important called the reverse proxy clusters fallback. There's actually, it's a really long name for the setting. That is the address for your old legacy application. So that's your old URL. That is the URL that you will fall back to if your new application has not implemented that request yet. So then you can start, now you have, that extension will build a new project for you. You'll have it set up, and you can start shifting code from your legacy application into your new one. So you start with your first controller. If this is a web API, you can pretty much copy the controller into your new app and any of the supporting files. You would usually keep the same folder structure as your old application. There's actually a window that comes with this extension, and I'm showing that here. It has some interesting options where it'll let you migrate a controller. You can click on that and choose a controller to migrate, and it'll do some auto-magical stuff behind the scenes to try to migrate that controller for you. It doesn't work super well from what I've done, so I'm not sure I would bother with it. I would probably just copy the old files into the new project and then start the process of migrating that particular piece of code. So you might need to, let's say, like we have a compiler error here for log4net. You might choose that you're going to switch logging frameworks in this rewrite. I don't know if log4net is .NET Core compatible. It might be. But that would be one thing. You would basically install your new NuGet package, port your code to use the new APIs or what have you. So this is where the actual migration work is happening. You're fixing those compilation errors, changing it over to the new frameworks, the new APIs. And so you can see here, I have, if you can see it, I've got a legacy MVC application, and then I have a newer MVC core application, and you can, you know, go through the process of copying your controllers from the old to the new, rewriting or migrating the code, and that's kind of how your process would work. You would go one at a time, just moving those controllers over. So you would do this until your new application handles all of the functionality of your old one. So deploying this, like I said earlier, you will need infrastructure set up for the new application. All the consumers of your old app will need to change URLs unless you set it up in such a way that you can keep the newer URL. You could deploy your application, have it use the same URL, and then change your legacy app to use a different URL so that your consumers don't have to switch URLs. But yeah, so you would deploy your new application out onto Azure or what have you, and it would run under a URL. All requests to your app will go to that new application, and it will decide, can I handle this request? If I can, I'll go ahead and handle it. If not, I'm going to forward this request to the old app, let it handle it, and then I will return the response back to the client. You will need to set that reverse proxy setting to the URL of your legacy app. So when you deploy, that is something that you will need to set. Debugging. So it might sound like a lot of work or complicated if you want to debug this new application, because you're going to have your new app and your old app, and like let's say you have a web front end like React or Angular. It's going to be sending requests to your service while you're debugging, and you don't want it to break if it is a request to your old app. Like, you want it to basically function as one application while you're debugging. So this actually gets set up during that configuration when you use that extension. When you start your project, both of your apps will be hosted on your computer locally, and you can actually debug wherever in your code. You might need to set it up a little bit. There is this settings page for the startup project. I think that this is a setting in your solution. If you right click on it, you can have a choose startup project option, and it takes you to this window, and you can basically give your old and your new app, set them to start, and then when you start the project to debug, it will start both of them up and host them side by side. So actually debugging is really easy. I've done it plenty of times. It's seamless, surprisingly seamless. Here's a reference. This is basically an article that you can go to if you want to learn more about this. Migrating from ASP.NET to ASP.NET Core is the name of the article. This is a project that Microsoft created and support. So you would go to their page to check it out. Basically, that is it.
Yep, Alex up. We'll go get yourself a piece of pizza while we're waiting and transitioning. Thank you, Jonathan. Yep.
I want more pizza! I want a belt!
Yeah. We're sticking around after the meeting. We're sticking around after the meeting.
Yeah,
I just want to ask you some questions.
yeah, sure thing.
Look, I don't know if that's... Gotcha. Sweet.
Yeah, it's
They're
Oh, just a sec. I have multiple screens because it's extending my display instead of mirroring it, so I'm a little lost. How do I do this again? I think it's
Windows PP.
Hey, there we go.
This side looks funky. Oh yeah, look at that.
Oh, it was looking funky on the other. The text was jumping weird earlier.
I wonder if I'm gonna try.
All right.
I hit the button line.
Did you try turning it on and off again? All right. I think am I recording? Or oh, I still need to select a screen. That would help. I want to do this one.
So that you can just minimize it.
Okie dokie. How do I quit?
I love whatever that
What's up?
Oh, looks.
That's on purpose.
Okay. Yeah. No, I mean.
All right.
All I see is redhead, brunette.
No intake required for the psychedelic trip.
It's by design. To keep you interested, engaged. If you get a little bored about what's over here, you can have a little EDM party over here.
There you go.
I'm Alec Harrison. I went to Iowa State, decided after spending 4 years, I really wanted to do something exciting with my life. So I decided to get into agriculture and watch corn grow. So I was at Pioneer in Corteva for a while. Learned a lot of great things there, all joking aside. Ton of great technologies and advancements being done over there. Learned a lot. Currently run the Iowa Microsoft Azure user group as well as the Kansas City, and then we'll actually be hosting a Midwest Global AI Days November 3rd, hoping to make that virtual. So if anybody wants to do that, I'm hoping to announce it here in a little bit. Have speakers, just working out the schedule for that. My presentation today, as Matt was talking about earlier, is custom auth claims in .NET 6. So I have been the guy before on plenty of teams that gets stuck with figuring out how auth works. So for better or worse, that means I have some experience in that. Share some of that with you, so hopefully it's not as scary, or maybe you can help empathize with the person who has to do it at your organization. So this is going to be a little bit different presentation than I'm normally used to, just because of time. Part of it's pre-baked, so we'll kind of go through that, but we'll build it from scratch, try to cut corners and speed this up as quick as possible. So when you go to Azure, you're going to have kind of one main concept for your application is an app registration. That's going to house most of your AD. So a lot of that's going to be where your entry point is, how you get your claims, how you get your token, how Azure figures out in AD who you are. And you can also associate custom roles with that, you can associate groups, you can do all sorts of crazy stuff. But for the sake of this demo, we're just going to do one custom role, because it seems like it'd be easy, right? Not always. So we'll go ahead and create a new demo one. Demo app. And then I am going to want to steal this, because we're going to want to use Postman. I am copying and pasting. There will probably be a lot of that here. So wait for that to roll through. And we'll also be using .NET 6, which another fun thing with that is they no longer have a startup CS file. So if you're looking to move from getting rid of your startup file to just a program CS, you can also do that as well. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a role. I believe this just got announced to be GA. If not, this is a preview feature. You can go in and create roles here. If you do not have that for some reason, because your organization has it locked down or whatnot, you'll have to go through the application manifest, which is just this big gross thing. And we'll go ahead and steal an app role here.
Infrastructure as code.
App role. So what I'm doing here is I'm creating an app role, calling it Omaha User Group Admin, and we're setting it at an application level. So that means anybody who gets the credentials to log into this application, whether it's a service, whether it's a person, will have this role for free. And then the other thing we're going to do is security groups. What is that? Group membership claims is the word I'm looking for. And we're going to set that to security groups. So that allows us to actually read the roles of somebody and the claims on their token. Go ahead and save that. And then we're going to expose this. So, we're going to go to API permissions so that we tell our app registration that we're going to allow you to use this and give this back on our tokens. So to add a permission of that, we're going to go to My APIs. This is also how you would do on behalf of Access if you have multiple APIs and want to handle all of your handshakes and tokens via the UI. So we'll do this, the Omaha user group. We'll do an application permission. We're going to allow it to have that role, and the sharing screen sign's in my way. Cool. And now we just got to grant admin consent so we can say that everybody in here can have that role. Now what we're going to need to do is create a secret. This is the super secretest secret, so if you're recording, I will delete this before somebody else sees this recording. All right, and I'm going to save that off here. All right, so now our app registration should be good. And to make this go completely from the ground up, we're going to start a new .NET project from scratch. So we'll go ahead and do into a temp directory, and we're going to do .NET new web API. And that'll be the simple, if we do .NET run, you'll have your fancy little weather controller, the URLs that it's sitting at, and hopefully, if my Mac doesn't lock me out, the Swagger code gen to go along with that as well. So if I go to Swag, there we go. We'll try it out. Execute, and we see we have our controller here. So what we're going to do next is configure a Postman request to get us an Azure AD token. Actually, we'll take one step back here. We're first going to lock ourselves out of our API. So what we're going to want to do...
Sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I just being silly next time.
You're good. All right, so we're going to go ahead and start adding some packages here. And there is a .NET template that has some of this already put in. It's just kind of hard to follow. So I like to start from scratch and then go backwards. All right. And now what we're going to want to do is we're going to add a policy onto our controller endpoint. So that'll allow us to lock it down and tell .NET behind the scenes, I want you to go to your program.cs file, tell me what that policy is, and then I'm going to validate your claims based on that. So now we're going to go to our program.cs file and notice that there's nothing here. So it'll hit that, it'll say I don't know what I'm doing, I'm just going to let you through. So what we're going to want to do is specify some of that. Scroll down here. First thing, the joys of being on a Mac is you don't always get all of the helpful, what you're missing as using directives. So we'll need all of this. I'm going to go side by side. And then we're going to add the builder services, add authentication. And I'll walk through what that all is once I get that in here. All right, so what that's doing, and let's do this.
You missed the D on the front.
Oh, shoot. Thanks. So what that's doing is telling you I want to use JWT authentication in my application. I'm going to add the Microsoft Identity Provider, and then we're going to use Azure AD as the pre-configured thing. So it knows how to then decouple that. Sorry, and I almost forgot one thing. It's going to look at our app settings here, which I'm going to need to change slightly to the client ID we just created. And then because it's in my application still, it should be the same tenant. So we got that all set up. Now we're going to do add authorization. So this is the part that actually makes the policy itself work. So we'll do this. What this is saying is I'm going to have a policy rule called Omaha User Group Admin Policy. That's the name of it. That's how I'm going to define it in my controller. And then I'm going to look for the required role in the JWT token of Omaha User Group Admin. That is the string I'm going to basically compare the JWT of to the application when I read it. And then just for hitting your head against the wall, this is nice. Somebody brought up printing out social security numbers. Identity model event source show PII will actually give you a debug to your console so you can actually see why you're not authenticating or what's working when you're stepping through stuff. Because nothing is more frustrating than when you hit your API with the token and it says 401, 403, sorry. And you're like, I'm the one building you and I don't know why you're doing that. So this will give you a nice little debug here. And because it's a live demo, I bet it's not going to work first try, so we can probably test out debugging this as well. All right, so now if we do .NET Run, go back to our lovely Swagger page. Hey, you're missing a using directive. And this is where pre-building stuff helps. Let's see if that works. Weather forecasting. Thanks. Oh, you know what? I bet this is... Okay.
Yep.
I typed out the README before I renamed the policy name because I had it the same and thought that was a little confusing of which one's where, so... Maybe? Oh, I'm missing a using directive in the controller. That is it. There we go. Live demos are awesome. Because they always work the first try. Alright, so now if we go ahead and hit our Swagger endpoint here, we will get a 401. You can't get in because we hit it without a token, saw we didn't have a token, just fired it right back at us. So what we're going to do is we're going to take that client ID of that application we just got. This is also my tenant ID up here. And I'll share out part of this too, so we'll get that secret I saved off somewhere secretly. And then, oops, I did forget a step here. I don't think you technically need it, but one thing you can do is expose an API. But if you use the default, Microsoft says you don't need to supply it, so I haven't quite figured out if you actually need it or not, but just for the sake of being overly cautious, we're gonna throw this here. And then I'll hit send. Hey, we got a token. And if everything went right, we should be able to go to your favorite token decoder of your choice. And we should see a, let's see. Oops. I didn't mean to do that. And if this doesn't work, I do have a pre-built one, because there should be a roll there. Here we go. Let's go to the fallback, because sometimes it does take some time for this all to come through. Which, if you've ever dealt with authentication and authorization, is fun, because then you don't know if it's a you problem or if it's a timing issue with Microsoft.
Apply changes means wait in queue.
Pretty much. It means they'll get to it when they get to it. Alright, so I'm going to take this secret because I know the token here is good. And I'm going to take this. And we'll do again. Save the default. Send that. Oh, what do you like? Invalid client secret provided. Did I not copy that whole thing? There we go. And you'll see the rolls here once it finally gets around to propagating. Just for the sake of time, we'll go ahead and hit the API. And then I can take my token, go over here to my weather forecast controller. So I'll hit it without that. You'll see we got a 401. Go ahead and hit it again. And we got back the weather. So that's just basic way to add roles. You'll do something similar if you want to add it for people as well. Instead of assigning it an application, you'd then go in and say this user has this role, and kind of go that way if you wanted to use roles on your front end too.
Now do service principal.
So when you add a user, do you do that through the enterprise app screen?
Yeah.
Okay.
You can do it that way. You can do it programmatically. You can do it a few different ways. Yeah. Any other questions? Cool. Thanks for your time.
I know Alec and I have been talking for months on LinkedIn, and this is the first time we've met. Robert, you still here?
Great work.
Oh, did you want to go again?
Yeah.
Okay.
You got time?
Yeah, we got about 10 minutes here, so it works out pretty well. Just that link, just to be good.
Yep, I should have it.
C-class. Actually, yeah, I was supposed to be. You know, that the class, A class, C, B class, C class, C class being so bad it's going to be it's unstable. Yeah, like all the using statements, I had to like run it because it was like simple. Like I was like walking. C class. But like the one time I was like, man, I wish I had it.
All right, we'll get started.
Need to
Once that shows up.
Is it?
I got to plug in.
Yep, press the
Big or the?
Yep, the middle one. Although before it was a solid grid, so.
Try and map with the USB just to get it reset. Yeah, before it was just solid red. There we go. And then we hit the, there it goes. Yep.
All right, so we're going to talk about capture the flag. So the first thing is, capture the flag is a security competition, basically. So the first thing I'm going to say is be safe while you're doing these things because you are using tools that hackers usually write. I usually don't run them on my specific machine. So I use Windows. If you didn't know, since Windows 10, it has a sandbox. So it is basically a small virtual machine that you can open, do everything you want into, you close it, everything goes away. So that's a way to isolate those kind of tools. Otherwise, I do a virtual machine. I do Windows native boot, which just means you can have a single VHD, but you can boot straight on your hardware. So you have all the benefits of having a virtual machine, but you can back it up in one thing, it's one file. So if I do stuff that I really didn't trust once I got there, I can just shut it all down, copy my previous over, and I'm good. So just think ahead. If the place looks kind of shady, just do it somewhere else. We'll see some of these. So capture flag, how many people did the outdoor game when you were kids? Anybody? Were you running around in the neighborhood? Yeah, that's not this. But it is a computer security competition. You utilize a variety of different security technologies to find what they call flags. If you're lucky, the flag follows a certain pattern. So there's a couple of these I'll show you that don't, and most of them do. So usually it'll look like flag with some braces that you know when you find it. Otherwise, sometimes it's not really clear. The name of the challenge is often a hint, and I kept a document the whole time I did the competitions because you'd start to get like 80% of the way through on one and get frustrated. You don't want to have to come back and start all over again. And it turned out being useful because when I was done, the person wanted me to do a write-up. So I had all the screenshots and exactly what I did to be able to do the write-up right away, which was helpful. So I'd never done this before. I have imposter syndrome just like everybody else has. You know, I'm a developer, I'm not a security person. I do some operations, I do a little security. And I went to Code Camp virtually in 2020, and I also found out I had a lot of free time in 2020 because you're just sitting around the house. So I said I might as well try it. So that's why I did my first capture the flag. So I'm just going to show you a couple of the different things you'll run into, just so you have an idea of what you might have to solve. So GSC is Granite State Code Camp 2020. This first challenge was this, and the challenges are usually, they specify how many points there are. So I usually go after all the low ones first, get as many easy ones as I can, and then come back for the harder ones. So this was the welcome challenge. It helps to be a web developer as well. So you see this, that's encoded, right? It's probably not encrypted, it's encoded in some way. There's only a certain number of encodings it could be. Usually if it ended with an equal, that would be a base 64 encoding. I tried it anyway, so there's tools out there that you can go punch it in, say I want to convert that to a base 64 decode, and when I did, that was the flag. So again, he doesn't follow a pattern for that one, but that one's pretty obvious that that was a flag. Next one was he had a key, a picture of a key. So one of the things in security is called steganography, if I can say it right, steganography, and that's when you're hiding things in plain sight, so to speak. So I'll show you how to do this one. So again, I'm going to go out and run. I have to use a somewhat dubious. I'm going to go to the sandbox. So I can just open up the sandbox.
Oh, we lost the screen.
Oh, man. I'm going to plug in because I think it keeps... We have to let it go green.
It should go solid, and then there.
All right, sorry about that. So this is the sandbox. Like I said, I can do anything I want in here now, and it's not going to affect my main machine. So I actually have a share in here, and I'm going to go out to, I'll just open up favorites. So I don't know this person from Adam, so I don't know if it's evil site or not, so I decided to sandbox it. But I can just take that key file, drop it into here. So what they're doing is they're basically embedding stuff inside JPEGs or PNGs and such, so that you can't visibly see it. But if I were to go into here, these understand how to take things out of it. So if I say show strings, that is one of the keys again. So steganography, if you just see an image, that's something that's somewhat common for people to hide things in.
What do you do with the key once you find it?
Oh, good question. So each of the challenges has the verbiage, what the thing is, and then it has a box to punch in what the key is, and it tells you that it's good or not.
Okay.
Yep. The next one was image is everything. And so they gave you kind of a hint again in the challenge. They just had this file, imageseverything.txt. So we'll go back to the sandbox here. So I open this up, and that is just a bunch of random characters. That looks like hex. So if you've done enough stuff, that should look like hex. So I'm going to go out to another one of these sites. Go to...
These are all online tools.
Yeah, so if you're doing Linux, you can get Kali Linux or Parrot, and they have all the hacking tools and stuff built in. So I'm going to go back to here. So this Cyber Chef, I'm probably going to take it out of the sandbox one of these days because I have seen it referenced from enough people that I think it's probably safe. So I'm going to take all that hex, I'm going to punch it in here in the input, and then it lets me do what it calls recipes. So I think that's hex. I'm just going to drag it and drop it here. And the first thing you notice at the very top now, it says .png. So this file happens to actually be a PNG file. So I'll save all the, I would save it as a PNG, get over to my main machine. When I open it up then, it looks like that. And again, the thing along the bottom happens to be the flag. Another one, free ebook. So this, they had a picture. I didn't take a good view of the picture when I started. So I'll show you what it looked like. I'll close this. So we have a bunch of write-ups for this stuff. So I'm just going to go to, where are you? It just had this bookshelf and ignore that whale circuit. Basically, they had a picture of a bookshelf. That's all they told you. So I had to sit and look at this for a long time. I pulled it up in DevTools and realized it used a CSS style sheet. So then in DevTools, you can actually block requests from finishing. So I just blocked the CSS file, and the CSS file happened to be hiding that section, so then the key was visible. Does that make sense? So you'll see you get all sorts of wacky different things to try. Next one was this again. It looked like it could have been an encoding, but they had a flags.txt file. That's the only thing they gave you with this one. So choose wisely. I was guessing one of those was the right one, so I had to figure out how I wanted to do that one. So in this one, I actually wrote a .NET program. So you probably can't read all the code on that right there, but I basically took, that was a hash. So I wanted to, I can figure out the length if you've ever done stuff with hashes before. It takes, no matter how big the input is, it'll be a fixed sized output. If you sit and stare at that one for a while, you realize how large that is, and you can figure out what hashing algorithm it is. So by looking at that, I was guessing it was SHA-256. So I just wrote a program to walk through that flag file, take everything that might be the right flag, hash it, and then compare it to the value they gave us. You can't reverse hashes, so that's how you break in. And so I kicked that out and got that answer as well. A couple other ones. So those were all from Granite State Code Camp. That's coming up in November, and they're going to have a challenge to capture the flag again if you're interested. Otherwise, there's two good sites. This PicoCTF is a good one, and this one just had a link to a website. But you can go set up a free account, and they have literally thousands of challenges on all sorts of different levels, so it's a great place to go try to practice stuff. So this one, I believe the trick was to do a trace. So if you haven't used Fiddler before, it's just going to watch all the traffic between my client and server. Where are you here? That'll link to that website. Inspector. So I'm going to hit Control F5 now that Fiddler's running. I just looked at what the requests were, and the first one I was looking for was the HTML, which is right here. I take the compression off, I do the raw view, scroll down to the bottom, hey, there you go, HTML, there's a comment, here's the first third of the flag. And then you figure they're probably going to do that for the rest of it. So if you look at the CSS, bottom of that has the second third, and if you go to the JavaScript file, you'll see the last part of the third. Another good one is Learn CTF. This again has thousands of different challenges again. So this one just said, where can my robot go? So I'm going to clear this. If anybody know what a robot's text file is or use them for search engines? Basically, you're telling search engines places you don't want them to go on your site. And the bad news about that is, and the site is sometimes slow, so bear with me for a moment. I'm going to close that. Eventually this will come up. So robots file is meant to tell search engines, please don't crawl this area of your site. Hackers love that because that's the stuff that you don't want people to index. So if it eventually goes here, I'll see if it does or not, it gives me a different URL. So I don't know why they're slow. I'm going to punch in. So you take that URL. This is what it says in the robots text file. Basically, don't go here. We don't want you to see that. And if this ever comes up, it will end up showing that particular flag. And again, they follow the pattern, so it's easier to tell that it's a flag. So again, some good competitions. The Granite State Code Camp was the first one I ever did, so I've done that one twice. I found that PicoCTF is from Carnegie Mellon, I believe, and CTF Learn. So again, you can go out there and try all of those. But they have them at major hacker conferences, so if you're familiar with DEF CON and Black Hat, you can make tons of money if you were to win that. So first year, I got middle of the pack. Last year, the first and second went back and forth and back. And if you talk to my wife, I spent way too much time playing this. I really get into the competition part of it. And so I would just be like, he just got another one, he just beat me. So I'd pull out the laptop again, and I thought I was okay. In the last 20 minutes, I finally got the one thing I couldn't figure out in a Docker image and ended up winning that, which was kind of fun. So again, there's Twitter, email, blog, slides. That's all I have.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks to our presenters tonight. It's good stuff, as always.
We got a couple of prizes.
Yeah, we got some prizes to give away. I'm going to go ahead and end the stream. So if you're watching online, you should come next time. Yep. See you guys later. All right, so...